What up, everybody, and welcome to Baz on Blades. My name is Baz, and I talk about blades. Today, we're going to do the third and final installment on the new Ganzo Firebird FH11 flipper folder. I have done an in-depth review featuring this green-blue G10 model. And I've also done on that same example a guts and glory disassembly video, so you can take a look at the inside of it. So far it has been a very impressive knife, and not only to me, throughout the community, or at least a part of the community that appreciates budget knives. This knife is very hot right now. This third video and last video that I'm going to do on the FH11 is going to cover and introduce the Gen 2 version of this knife. Now, it was rumored that there was a Gen 2 version coming to take care of a couple of complaints or requests that Ganzo customers had, and that model is starting to come in. In fact, I got this carbon fiber version in today. I got it from Power Cutlery, and they were, at the time I ordered, sold out of both of the G10 versions, but they did have the carbon fiber version, and they had the photos up showing that it was a Gen 2 version. So I went ahead and grabbed one of those, and I really like this it's not faux carbon fiber, it's actual carbon fiber, but it's a laminate of carbon fiber over G10 that Ganzo uses on their different models. Now, setting aside the differences between the G10 version and the carbon fiber version, the G10 version, the handles are machined differently. You can see you've got a large concave section in the center, and then you've got a large facet on the top, a smaller facet on the bottom going around the perimeter of the handle scales. It's a sort of a three-dimensional machining pattern. In the carbon fiber versions, regardless of whether they are Gen 1 or Gen 2, the handle scales will be flat and then have a small facet that runs the perimeter of the scale. And they have to be flat because the carbon fiber is just a single layer over G10. If you were to machine that concave groove in it, it would just machine the carbon fiber away, and then it wouldn't be carbon fiber, it'd just be black G10. So, Baz on Blades, what is the change or changes that are coming in the Gen 2 version? Well, a couple of things, actually three things that I have noticed. First and foremost, I'm sure you have already seen the Gen 2 version has been changed on the show side scale. The first change is to accommodate ambidextrous pocket clip mount. You can see in the Gen 1, you did not have that. You had the Firebird logo that was machined into the G10. Now on the Gen 2 version, you lose this logo and you gain ambidextrous mounting capacity or capability of this very good deep carry pocket clip. That takes care of a couple of issues. Now, of course, all the left-handed people felt sort of left out because they did not have ambidextrous pocket clip mounting capability on it. And then you had a group of people that they just said, Ganzo, what are you thinking? Why did you put this big Firebird logo here when you've already got it here? It's just too much. And while I personally did not mind, as this is fairly subtle in my opinion, I can see some people are very sensitive to branding. They don't want to see a lot of branding on a knife. And having that logo twice on the show side, I can see how that could be overkill to some people. So in the Gen 2 versions, regardless of whether you'll get the G10 or the carbon fiber, you're going to lose this extra logo here on the handle, and you are going to gain ambidextrous pocket clip mounting. So that is the big change that came in Gen 2. But it's not the only one. The next one is fairly subtle, and I honestly, unless I had these two knives side by side, I would not have noticed it at all. And they have changed how deeply the blade sits within the handle in the closed position. I'm not sure if this is coming across, guys, but you can see the juncture of the blade where it disappears into the handle here, and then on the Gen 2 version, and it is much deeper in the Gen 2 version. I don't know how they did that. I have not disassembled this knife as I just got it in today right before I went into work. But it does sit deeper in that handle, and it is noticeable when they are side by side. Now, if they're not side by side, you're not going to notice it, guys. It makes the tip does sit deeper, if that is apparent at this angle. The tip does sit deeper within the handle scales on this Gen 2 version. Maybe, and I have not seen any evidence of this, maybe people were complaining that this tip was too close to the top, but I'm pushing. You can see my fingernail going white where I'm pushing, and I'm not able to catch that tip at all on this Gen 1 version. So I don't know if they wanted to lower the tip down in it, or they just wanted to slim it up, or I'm actually not sure, guys. But it does sit a little deeper, and that's the second big change, if you want to call that big. Now, there is a third change that is even more subtle, but I think personally, in my opinion, is the best change on this knife, and that has to do with the pivot hardware. Now, in my original review, there was only a couple of things that I dinged this knife on in my review. If you remember, if you remember, my edge grind was uneven side to side, and that's something common in budget knives. So not a huge deal on this knife, and I can resharpen it. But the major issue that I had was the pivot hardware. Now, while I like the look of the pivot hardware, I do. No issues there. I did find that the socket, the torque socket on this was very shallow, and it wasn't the tightest fit. The socket wasn't machined as precisely as I would have liked to have seen. So we're gonna get this T8 in here, and I'm gonna show you guys. You've got some play, and I want you to see it's not very deep at all. I hope that's coming across. It feels, it's a feel in the hands, guys. It does not feel that secure. And the hardware, other than that, the hardness of the hardware was fine. I didn't have any issues with it stripping out or anything. It just wasn't confidence inspiring because that socket was so shallow and not very tightly cut. Now, on the newer version, at least in my example, we have a deeper cut socket, and it's not radically deeper. It's just enough to feel, guys, and it is much tighter. Take a look at this. Okay, there is just the barest perceptible play. It feels much more secure, guys. I would feel a lot more confidence in disassembling this knife with this. I want to say that it's improved. It could just be variations between my two examples. And, that's not unheard of in the budget realm, guys. $22 to $25 for this knife. I don't see how Ganzo is even making any money on these knives. Other than that, everything is great on this. The fit and finish is great. Guys, this thing is, woo, look at that action. That's like, that's like the sweet stuff right there, guys. I don't want to say what it's like because, we don't want to take it in the gutter, but that's like the sweet stuff there. In my Gen 2 version, the action is slightly better than my Gen 1 version. Both are incredibly smooth. This one, I think my Gen 1 may have just a little more lock bar tension on it. And that's the difference I'm seeing as far as drop shut smooth, because the radial action on the bearings, as far as what you feel through the blade as you rotate on the bearings, it feels the same. It does. It feels the same. The detent on both of them is moderate. I have seen, some complaints about light detents on these. And I've also seen videos where people are modifying these knives. What they're doing is they're disassembling the knife, and then they take the lock bar and they spring it over a little bit, and what that does is it puts just a little more tension there, a little more tension on that detent ball, because what it feels like to me is the detent is actually pretty decent. It just doesn't feel like it has a lot of lock bar tension on it. And I believe the reason is Ganzo decided to go with this sort of super slinky action rather than a super stout detent. And if it is the lock bar tension that is the difference, that's a very fine adjustment. There's a balancing act between that free folly sort of shutting and tension on the detent. So that can be adjusted a little bit by the end user. In my versions, it's not a big deal for me. I live in a state where even if I can shake the blade out by swinging it or slinging it or, whatever, it doesn't matter in the state that I live in. There's no legal standard for that. As far as knives go, I can carry anything that I want. I may not be able to carry a sword like you can in Texas, but I don't own any swords, so it doesn't really matter. So guys, there you go. There is the Gen 2 of the FH11. Not huge changes, unless you're left-handed. That's a pretty big change right there, that you got ambidextrous pocket clip mounting. And then the guys that are logo sensitive, they've lost the second Firebird, the CNC machined Firebird logo that was on the Gen 1s. Say bye-bye to that. So all you have now is the single Firebird logo on the show side of the blade, and then your pertinence on the back, which is, Firebird, Ganzo, Firebird knife made by Ganzo, FH11, and D2 for your steel signifier. So we got that change. And then, at least on my example, the blade seats a little further into the handle in the closed position. I mean, and it's not like this knife was, super wide or anything. If I remember right, in the closed position, even up here at the widest point with the flipper tab, it was like 1.08 inches, guys. That's not very wide at all. This is a pretty slim knife altogether, and doggone, these things are smooth, guys. I mean, $22 to $25. This is a no-brainer as far as I'm concerned, and I've got to say, probably looking like, at least so far, my 2018 budget knife of the year. So anyway, there is a first look at the Gen 2, covering some of the changes in it. Whether they're actual changes or they're just some slight variations on my example. But you do get the ambidextrous pocket clip mount, and they did do away with the excess branding on the show side on the handle scale. Maybe an upgrade on the pivot hardware. It feels like it on my example, and for whatever reason, the blade seats a little deeper into the handle in the closed position on my Gen 2. All right, guys. As always, I thank you for taking the time to watch one of my videos. God bless all of you, and we will talk to you again.